Hey, what's up, everyone? So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day you are choosing to watch these videos. This week, we are diving into population ecology, which in the current edition of your book is Module 2.2. Last week, we introduced the idea of ecology kind of just in general, right? And so this week, we are going to dive into some of the more specifics of different regions. Your book, in particular, dives into the idea of wolf populations in North America, in the western U.S., and this has been a topic of somewhat recent current events. So if you're like, this sounds familiar, it probably is. So kind of interesting to see these points. So let's dive in. And yes, so we're in week 4. Woohoo! So last week, just a brief review of what we looked at, right? So we kind of dove things into looking at the individual, population, community, ecosystem, biome, and eventually the biosphere, and we talked a few more details on that. What we're going to focus on this week is that of population. So a group of individuals of the same species that are living and interacting in the same region. And just note that there can be different kinds of populations, right? So what we're going to focus on in this particular unit is the gray wolf of North America. So generally speaking, or, getting back to the definition, population ecology is actually a subfield of biology that deals with how populations themselves change over time, and then also how populations can interact with the environment. So in this case, the wolves actually played a really, really big part of the wilderness in the Northwest United States, Northwest America, basically. But we didn't really realize the down the river impacts that wolves had until much later. So, kind of overall, ecologists study a specific population to better understand how to sustain and promote its survival. And of course, we look at all different kinds of species for this idea, but your book, again, goes into wolves more specifically in Yellowstone National Park, specifically as well. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of the region, if you've never been there, I've actually never been to Yellowstone. I've been through Wyoming, but I've actually never been to Yellowstone as of the time of this recording. So back in the 1900s, the early 1900s, over 300 to 400 wolves actually lived within the park. But unfortunately, by 1926, there were a big fat zero. So where did these hundreds of wolves go? What happened, unfortunately, was overhunting. So basically, there were like 3 main things that got the wolves. One was overhunting. So the United States Predator Control Program intentionally killed over 136 wolves from the years 1914 to 1926. So there was, literal intentional hunting going on there. The next was habitat destruction. So we decimated, or we cut down trees in order to build farms. Makes sense, right? Like, humans are here now. We need to make our own space. Then lastly was starvation. And this was due to the overhunting of the wolves' food sources. So humans need food too, right? So we hunted their elk, deer, and bison. By 1980, scientists actually discovered that wolves migrated back into Montana from Canada. So this is the state of Montana. It's just north of Wyoming here. And Canada is just north of that, right? So we found some wolf populations in Montana. And because of this new knowledge of the benefits of wolves, there was a reintroduction of wolves into Yellowstone and Idaho starting in 1994. So again, this is the state of Wyoming. This little kind of boot-looking thing here is Idaho. And this began the Gray Wolf Project for Yellowstone, where they reintroduced 41 wolves since 1994. It has been largely successful. By 2002, the project reached the goal of having over 300 individual wolves and 30 breeding pairs. 3 different recovery areas within Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming that maintained for at least 3 years. So it did pretty good, right? This kind of nicely shows that when humans can intervene to do something good can come down the line. What I do want to mention here real quick, actually, and I put several of these posts in the link below this video, actually, you'll see, and then also in your main introduction page, I linked these as well. But there's a criminal podcast that I like to listen to, or a true crime podcast, excuse me, called Criminal. And they actually covered 2 episodes going through sometimes like how they track some of these wolves because they lost a breeding pair, and it was like an alpha, and they were really concerned about it. So I thought it was really interesting. So if you have any desire to listen to that, I have links to the podcast underneath this video on the Canvas page, and also in the introduction page for this unit. Last thing I just want to mention here is just to kind of also show the success of our project here, is that as of 2015, there were more than 1,600 gray wolves in the northern Rocky Mountains, over 500 of which were in the greater Yellowstone region, and just over 100 of which were in Yellowstone National Park. Of course, the success story also resulted in many positive changes within the wolf's ecosystem, and we'll get to what those changes are in the next several videos. Unfortunately, however, the wolves are no longer protected by the Endangered Species Act. There's continuous talk in Congress about the Endangered Species Act. The previous administration kind of loosened ideas of what it means to be endangered. Hopefully, the current administration is trying to strengthen those back up, but there's a lot of loopholes that folks have to go through, excuse me. So that is our initial introduction to the gray wolf population and population ecology. Thank you so much for watching.